Good morning.
Hello, hi, how are you?
How are you?
Good morning.
Hi, can I set this up now?
Yes, go ahead. And we will both log on twice, but for me, the one that says FR Interpreter Shari is the one that should be assigned. And I think for Catherine, it's one that says Interpreter Catherine. Those are the two to assign to the French channels or French English.
Right. So if you can let us in though on another, we're going to come in shortly on another machine because that's how we listen to each other.
So what do you want me to do now? Just click this is the first time I've done this. So just click the interpretation.
Okay. And assign the two computers that are labeled interpreter.
I see that Eliana from Album is on, so Eliana can probably help get the assignment
Hi,
done.
everyone.
Hi,
yes,
Eliana.
I jumped here to help with the tech check. How are you?
So Chari is French to English. Yes, that's done. And then interpreter 2 is Catherine.
They both should go to the English into French channel, and they are going to be the ones that are going to be switching from one language to the other.
I'm not understanding. I'm just doing it now. So
do you want to make me the host and I can assign them?
That's okay, I can do it. So the first one is French to English, interpreter 1, French to English.
Yeah.
That's
both of them should go to the English into French. You can change the language.
I think it actually doesn't matter whether it's
French
English
right?
or English to French. No, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. So just leave that.
It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So interpreter 1 is Chari, interpreter 2 is Catherine. Is there a third interpreter?
No, it's because you sent me an interpretation link and not a panelist link, but it doesn't matter. Just delete it and that will be all right.
Can you tell me if that's working? I just did it.
Yeah, we're seeing English.
Yes, I just got the screen, so I'm going to click now and be on the French channel.
Okay. I'm going to go now to the English channel. Chari.
So welcome, Fazana.
Amazing.
Welcome, Dr. Dubbo. We're just setting up the interpretation.
Catherine.
Okay, thank you very much.
Perfect.
Guinea team is here.
Let's
Dr.
go to the
Dubbo
French
and Dr.
channel.
Sama, we are here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll begin at 9:30. Thank you for being here early.
Yes, I can hear both of you. Amazing. Okay, Liz. So what you have to remember to remind everyone is that they need to select a language. It doesn't matter if they're going to be only speaking. If they are going to be speaking English, everyone needs to select the English channel, and whoever needs French interpretation, they need to pick French interpretation. And Chari and Catherine are going to be the ones that are going to be switching from one channel to the other. Attendees don't have to do anything else. Once they select the language that they understand, it's all set.
Great, that's fine. I will explain that. Is there anything else I have to do with the interpretation, or is everything fine?
It's everything fine. It's working already.
Thank you.
You're not going to be able, no, don't worry. You're not going to be able to hear them anymore unless you pick a channel right now. Because what Zoom does is that it takes their audio off from the main room. So you won't be hearing the presenters and the interpreters at the same time. That's the reason why I was speaking and you couldn't hear the interpreters unless you picked a language, but it's working.
Great. So I need to select English, right? Everyone needs to select a language.
Yes, everyone needs to select a language. Just in case someone starts speaking French, the interpreters are going to switch to the English channel. And if you don't pick a language, you're only going to listen to the French that's coming from the main room.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, so you're all set up. That's terrific. Fazana, can we do a check on your video?
There.
That's perfect. Perfect. So you only need to have that. You only need to put that on when we get to the global health panel.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Thank you for being with us. I'm going to check my screen sharing. Thank you everyone for joining early. The webinar will begin in 15 minutes. We're just doing our setup. So thank you for joining us.
Liz, I see that the interpreters are set up, so I need to go because I have another tech check for another client that is starting right now.
Great.
But I
Okay.
can join when the meeting starts to see if everything is going well.
Thank you, Eliana. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice meeting. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Jenny Waldorf from the World Health Organization. Can we check your video? Looking great. Terrific. Thank you very much. So you only need to put that on when we get to the Global Health Panel, the second half of the program. Thank you very much. Oya, welcome. Can we check your video?
Hi, everybody. Sure, I'm just turning it on.
That's terrific. You're very clear. Great. Thank you very much. So you only need to put that on when we get to the Global Health Panel section of the program, but we can see you clearly. Thank you.
All right.
We welcome those who have joined early. The webinar will begin in 8 minutes. Thank you. We will begin in 3 minutes. Thanks, everyone. Welcome, Veronica. Thanks for joining. You're very clear.
Can you hear me clearly as well?
Yes, everything's good. Thank you very much. You only need to have your video on for the Global Health panel. Thank you. We have Dr. Dabo and Dr. Shube both with us. Welcome. We'll begin in 2 minutes. Dr. Legge, welcome. I see you. Thank you. It's 9:30 a.m. Eastern, so we're going to begin our webinar. So welcome all to Introducing PCV, a critical child survival vaccine. Please select your preferred language, French or English, by clicking on the globe at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It's important that everyone selects a language. My name is Leith Greenslade. I'm coordinator of the Every Breath Counts Coalition. I'm delighted to moderate this webinar in partnership with some of the organisations that co-hosted the Global Pneumonia Forum, including the World Health Organization, UNICEF, Gavi, Save the Children and PATH. That historic forum took place in Barcelona at the end of January 2020, just as the pandemic was emerging. It brought together more than 60 countries, losing large numbers of children to pneumonia each year. They left the forum with a renewed commitment to reducing child pneumonia deaths by protecting all children with the pneumonia-fighting vaccines, especially the powerful Pneumococcal Conjugate vaccine, or PCV. Almost 2 years later today, we welcome 4 leading health officials from countries that have yet to introduce the PCV: Somalia, Chad, Guinea, and South Sudan. Together, these 4 nations are losing more than 40,000 children to pneumonia each year. 14,000 each in Somalia and Chad, 7,000 in Guinea, and 5,000 in South Sudan. And this is 2019 data. It does not include the impact of the pandemic. It doesn't have to be this way. The PCV is highly effective at reducing child pneumonia cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. After the PCV was introduced in Kenya, there was an 85% reduction in pneumococcal pneumonia among children. The incidence of pneumococcal disease even dropped sharply among older, unvaccinated age groups. PCV also protects against meningitis and sepsis, which cause more than 10,000 additional child deaths across these 4 countries. But until very recently, the PCV has been a very expensive vaccine. That changed last year when the Serum Institute of India produced Pneumocil at 30% below other PCV prices. Just a few weeks ago, the government of India announced national PCV introduction with the Serum Institute vaccine. And during the pandemic, we have seen Indonesia, Tajikistan, Timor-Leste, and Ukraine all make progress introducing PCV. Today, we'll begin with our health ministry colleagues describing the current barriers to introducing PCV to protect their children. Our global health panel will listen very carefully and respond to what they say. Hopefully together, we can come up with some solutions that will knock down the barriers to PCV introduction in these 4 countries. You will also have a chance to weigh in, and we encourage you to post your questions and comments as we go, and we'll pick those up later in the program. As this is a relaxed and informal conversation, we have encouraged our ministry and global health leaders to be candid. Our first health ministry speaker is Dr. Mukhtar Shube from Somalia's expanded program on immunization. Those of you who were at the Barcelona Forum will recall the inspiring comments from the Somali Health Minister, Dr. Fauzia Abikar, and her strong personal commitment to protecting the children of Somalia from pneumonia. We welcome Dr. Mukhtar Shube.
Well, thank you very much, ladies, and also good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues, those who are online. I'm Dr. Mukhtar. I'm the National EPI Program Manager of the Somali Federal Government of Somalia. So today I'll be sharing with you some information about the PCV introduction of the country, what are the key challenges, and also what are the way forward and the processes that we have done so far. As you know, the childhood pneumonia is a major public health, which is the leading cause of mortality in children. And pneumonia vaccine is not yet introduced in the routine EBI schedule of Somalia. Also, we conducted in Somalia, attended high-level advocacy at regional level and global level, looking for the introduction of the PCV vaccine. As you may be aware, in January 2020, the Federal Minister of Health, headed by His High Excellency Dr. Fauzia Abikar, the Minister of Health, attended Barcelona Pneumonia Forum to advocate more on the PCV introduction. And also, there are maybe in-country discussions is ongoing with the recent pneumonia workshop, which held in October 2021 in Nairobi. Pneumococcal vaccine is highly effective, and it protects against severe form of the disease. Introduction of PCV-10 in Kenya in 2011, and also in Burkina Faso 2013, PCV-13 showed evidence of reducing pneumonia-related hospitalization among children aged less than 5 years. What we done so far? What are the level of preparedness, maybe to introduce the PCV vaccine? So we established the task force who work the introduction of the vaccine, and also we continue collecting the surveillance and data of pneumonia to know the burden of the disease, and also to assess the cold chain functionality, storage capacity at the different levels, and bridge the gaps as to accommodate more and prepare space to store the vaccine, and also assess the availability of data tools, knowledge of adverse events following immunization reporting, functionality, and also we established AFI committee. We also want to agree the introduction. The approach is, it will be maybe on phasing approach, or maybe we will start at once across the country. And also now we want to work the development of the proposal of PCV vaccine introduction and mobilize more resource to introduce in the country. Also, the progress is the consensus that Somalia should introduce the Pcv vaccine into routine EBI was met, and also the burden of the pneumonia case in Somalia and evidence of the vaccination reducing pneumonia in neighboring countries, there is great justification to speed up the introduction of the vaccine in Somalia. The introduction also captures all the strategic documents that we were developed, mainly comprehensive multi-year plan, starting 2021 up to 2025, and also the EPI policy. These different documents we underline and we captured that the importance of the Pcv, and we are planning to introduce maybe the coming next year. Pcv vaccine is already included in the revised health management information system tools and the DHIS2 system to capture the reporting system. What are the opportunities that we have now to introduce is that the leveraging COVID-19 investments to mainly the oxygen plants that will help the pneumonia case management, and also the other donors like the Global Fund support, the Gavi support, and the World Bank support. And also we want also to leverage CCOB investment and also investments from the new partners like USAID, Japan, World Bank, those who are aiming to support the immunization and the vaccine program. And also leveraging on the commitment of the other key partners like the Save the Children and GSK to advocate for and support of the introduction of the vaccine. Investments on MCV2 and IBV2 also will help a lot. What are the key challenges that we are facing now is that the COVID-19 pandemic, which delays the introduction of the Pcv vaccine because we were more focused on the COVAX vaccination introduction across the country. And also we are having difficulties maybe initially in the reporting because we did not have, we were not capturing the DHIS2 system, the pneumonia cases. So now we improved. And also the country has difficult in the co-finance obligation because now we are struggling to provide Gavi the co-financing. So now we are having difficulties to meet and provide the co-finance. And as you know, if we introduce Pcv also, it will maybe increase the co-financing amount that the country is obligated to pay. And the last one of the challenge is that the oxygen infrastructure in the country is not that much maybe high because due to COVID-19 now we start maybe having oxygen plant, but initially we were not having oxygen plants that can support in management of the pneumonia cases. The next steps and the timeline that we want to do is that we want to do for the introduction of the Pcv vaccine is that establishment of the new vaccine introduction task force. We are planning to focus and address this issue as soon as possible. Second, develop costed proposal for Pcv introduction into immunization schedule. This we are aiming to do in March 2022. Advocate for a waiver of co-finance obligation for Somalia within the Q1 of the next year, and also include Pcv vaccine into the forecasting 2022 based on the population, which are we are planning to reach 624,000 children. At the end, finally, that's maybe what I wanted to share in this forum. Thank you very much. So maybe in case required further clarifications, I will be happy to hear. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. That was Dr. Mukhtar Shube from Somalia. Please, if questions and comments occur to you as our Health Ministry colleagues speak, please share them in the chat or the Q&A. We're going to pick those up, but we ask you to hold those until after our Health Ministry speakers have finished. So next on the program was Dr. Mohammed Hamid from Chad, but he's having some challenges connecting. So we're going to move to Dr. Mustafa Dabo, who was with Guinea's expanded program of immunization. And Dr. Dabo has slides, so I'm going to start sharing those. Dr. Dabo, please turn your video on if you're able. Please go ahead, Dr. Dabo.
OK, merci beaucoup. Je suis Dr Moustapha Dabo, coordinateur national du programme élargi de vaccination. Je voudrais dire qu'à l'image des autres pays, la pneumonie constitue un problème de santé publique majeur pour les enfants de la Guinée. Et c'est une des causes de morbidité, de mortalité, comme la rougeole. Et nous avons vu des chiffres qui augmentent, notamment sur les enquêtes, mais aussi sur les données administratives. Donc, c'est un réel problème de santé publique pour nous. Et la Guinée, justement, envisage l'introduction de ce vaccin qui est extrêmement important pour réduire les cas de pneumonie. Et initialement, nous avons prévu cette introduction depuis 2017. Donc, il y a eu quelques retards par rapport à l'introduction et des retards notamment dus à un certain nombre de facteurs que je vais relater ici tout à l'heure. Et ces facteurs sont essentiellement dus à la couverture vaccinale en DTC3 qui est inférieure à 70%. Et comme vous le savez, les directives avant indiquaient pour introduire un nouveau vaccin, il faudrait avoir une couverture en DTC3 supérieure ou égale à 70%. Quand on voit les données administratives, on est au-delà, mais lorsqu'on réalise les enquêtes, mais aussi les estimations OMS, UNICEF, nous sommes en moins de 70% de couverture en DTC3, qui est un obstacle pour nous à l'introduction des nouveaux vaccins. Vous pouvez faire défiler les diapos, s'il vous plaît. Voilà, donc l'évolution, je reprends l'évolution des cas de pneumonie chez les enfants. J'ai parlé de ça. Vous pouvez continuer. Allez-y. OK, donc c'est ce que je disais tout à l'heure. Initialement, on a prévu l'introduction depuis 2017, mais du coup, on a accusé du retard et notre dernière planification, c'était 2022. On devrait soumettre en 2021, mais aussi introduire en 2022. Slide. Vous pouvez dérouler, s'il vous plaît. Continue. Alors, ça, c'est quelques progrès que nous avons réalisés. Je disais tout à l'heure que la couverture en DTC3 est autour de 40% selon nos enquêtes, alors que selon les données administratives, on est au-delà de ça. Et comme progrès enregistré par la Guinée, c'est la mobilisation des ressources en faveur du PEV, le déploiement des réfrigérateurs solaires. On a déployé 423 centres de santé, mais aussi près de 1000 réfrigérateurs solaires qu'on a déployés sur le terrain avec le financement de Gavi à travers la plateforme d'optimisation des équipements de la chaîne de froid, le renforcement de la surveillance des maladies évitables par la vaccination, mais aussi en termes de progrès, aujourd'hui, nous venons de valider notre document de plateforme de la deuxième année de vie qui prend en compte l'introduction de vaccins à la première année, la deuxième année, mais aussi l'intégration avec d'autres services de vaccination. Diapo. Je parlais des défis liés à ça. Rapidement, le premier défi majeur pour nous, c'est la couverture en DTC3. Comme je disais, selon les orientations de l'OMS et des partenaires, avant d'introduire un nouveau vaccin, il fallait avoir une couverture en DTC3 supérieure à 70%. Donc, c'était vraiment le premier facteur de blocage pour nous. Mais entre-temps, on a eu Ebola qui a joué sur les couvertures vaccinales. Et aujourd'hui, avec la pandémie de COVID, les efforts sont beaucoup plus orientés sur COVID par rapport à la vaccination de routine. Mais aussi, l'autre défi pour nous, c'est les évidences scientifiques. Et voilà, pour documenter les différents variants, pour documenter le poids des pneumonies, justement, par rapport aux autres maladies évitables par la vaccination. On a les chiffres selon les enquêtes, mais aussi on a les données à partir des couvertures administratives. Un autre défi pour nous, c'est le cofinancement. Comme vous le savez, c'est un nouveau vaccin qui va être introduit, donc il faudrait que les autorités du gouvernement, on essaye de calculer, mais aussi d'assurer le cofinancement pour que les vaccins soient disponibles. Slide. Alors, quelles sont les opportunités que nous avons? Vous pouvez passer au slide. Quelles sont les opportunités que nous avons? La première opportunité, c'est la subvention de Gavi RSS qui est en cours, mais on va élaborer une autre subvention à partir de 2022. on va intégrer justement l'introduction du vaccin PCV. Et la seconde phase de Gavi pour le CCOP, c'est 233 réfrigérateurs solaires qui vont arriver. On a installé déjà plus de 900 réfrigérateurs pour augmenter le nombre de sites de vaccination. On a un don du Japon à 69 réfrigérateurs qui vont arriver, mais aussi dans le cadre de l'initiative COVAX, on a 25 réfrigérateurs. Donc tout ça, c'est pour indiquer que nous avons une capacité de stockage qui va nous permettre d'introduire ce vaccin. On a le GTCV et les CCIA qui existent. Nous devrons élaborer notre nouveau PPAC, mais aussi on a le soutien des partenaires de l'Alliance, que ce soit la Fondation Gates, l'OMS, l'UNICEF, GSI. Donc, tous ces partenaires nous accompagnent. On a un engagement des autorités du ministère de la Santé. Diapo. Slide, please. Alors, en termes de perspective, pour nous, en termes de perspective, c'est l'élaboration du document de soumission que nous voudrons faire en 2022. Et d'ici 2023, nous voulons introduire ce vaccin-là. Et on a besoin d'une assistante technique internationale, mais aussi nationale pour l'élaboration du document de soumission pour qu'on puisse introduire ce vaccin. Mais après, le document va être... Donc, l'introduction de ce vaccin va être inscrite dans les différents documents que nous allons élaborer. J'ai parlé de la plateforme de la deuxième année de vie, donc le PPAC. Donc, tous ces documents vont prendre en compte justement cette introduction-là. Ensuite, nous allons soumettre le document au GTCV comme d'habitude, qui est composé d'experts indépendants pour donner leur avis sur cette introduction-là qui va être certainement validée. Nous allons soumettre aux autorités du ministère, ensuite mobiliser des ressources internes. Donc, d'une manière générale, nous voulons faire la soumission en 2022 et assurer l'introduction avant la fin de l'année 2023. Voilà rapidement brosser la situation en Guinée et nous restons disponibles pour prendre en compte vos suggestions et les différents commentaires sur lesquels nous allons apporter beaucoup plus de clarification. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dabo, for that excellent presentation. We're going to bring on now South Sudan. We're still trying to make connection with Chad, but we'll move to South Sudan. And we have George Legge with us from the Ministry of Health from South Sudan. And once again, for those who are at the Global Pneumonia Forum, you will remember the former health minister of South Sudan, Dr. Luka Manoja, speaking many, many times over the course of our conference on the importance of this vaccine for children in South Sudan. So we're delighted to welcome George Legge from the ministry. Over to you.
Okay, good evening, good morning. I'm called George Auzanio Legge. I'm a National EPI Manager for South Sudan. As we are discussing, or we are meeting here because of the PCV vaccines. What I want to say, yes, the PCV vaccines is the important vaccines to the children. It's really saving life. Like in South Sudan, yes, we're having the high number of the pneumonia affecting the children in South Sudan. But up to now, we are not able to introduce the PCV vaccines. The reasons are many reasons. For example, one of the reasons we are have this plan in our multi-year plan or comprehensive multi-year plan. We have it. We're supposed to introduce it in 2022. But up to now, we are not able to introduce it because of the many reasons. One of the challenges, according to the policy, we're supposed to have a co-financing. Means that the economic situation is one of the challenges in the country. We are not able to introduce because need from us the co-financing. The donor need a co-financing, like the other vaccines. We're having a Penta, IPV. These vaccines also need co-financing. Even now we're having more than 3 years we are not able to pay, but because of this issue, we are not able to request new vaccines because we are not able to pay the co-financing. So children of South Sudan is not benefiting from these important vaccines. Yes, you know, PCV really is saving lives, but our children in South Sudan, they are not able to benefit from these vaccines because of this issue. You know, donors sometimes is putting conditions. Conditions is not helping those who are not able to fulfill the conditions. So these are the main issues in South Sudan. We are ready to introduce the vaccines, but because of these situations, lack of funds, and because of our economic problem in the country, so we are not able to introduce this vaccine. Yes, it's very important, but due to these issues, we are not able to introduce that in the routine program. I think this just brief what I want to say. So here just want to appeal to all the donors, if they able to respond to this condition, especially this issue of the co-financing. I'm sure we are ready to implement the plan and put these things in action so that the children of South Sudan can benefit and enjoy these important vaccines who are saving lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George Legge from South Sudan. I'm going to, we've been trying to get our Chad colleagues to join, but it is not working. It may work, we're continuing to try, but in the interests of time, we're going to move to our global health panel and hope that Dr. Mohamed Hamid can join us from the Chad Health Ministry. Obviously, Chad is a really critical country in terms of child health, so we hope that they will join. So we're going to bring our global health panel on to respond to some of the barriers and the opportunities that were raised by South Sudan, Guinea and Somalia. And thank you to our health ministry colleagues for being so clear in stating barriers and opportunities. All of the 4 individuals I'm about to introduce are from the new vaccine sections of their respective organizations. So they're all very much involved in supporting countries to introduce new vaccines, and PCV is still thought of as a new vaccine, even though it's been around for a long time. We have Dr. Jenny Waldorf from the World Health Organization. Welcome, Jenny. We have Dr. Oya Zaran Afsar from UNICEF. We have Veronica Denti from Gavi and Fazana Muhib from PATH's vaccine team. So we're going to ask them, I'm going to call on each of them just to give first reactions to what they just heard, and then we'll deep dive a little bit more. Please do post any questions or comments you have into the chat, and we'll make sure that we address those. So Jenny Waldorf, I want to open with you first, and if you could put your video on and just give us your reactions, comments to what you just heard. Thank you.
Unmute. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for inviting me to speak. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you to the country presenters for sharing the country situations, the challenges and opportunities. It's really important to think through the challenges to introduction in these settings, and so that we can offer our support and hopefully move forward on introductions, given the burden of disease that you mentioned at the start of the session. A few comments. I think all of the countries have mentioned, or a couple of countries had mentioned concerns about the burden, of course, and documenting the burden. the burden of disease for pneumococcal disease is well documented globally. And in these 4 countries, we know that there are pneumonia deaths happening, and we want to encourage the introduction of PCVs, obviously. We would like to assist countries with strengthening surveillance systems that may be in place to document pneumococcal disease prior to introduction and following introduction, so that there would be opportunities to document impact of pneumococcal disease. But having these systems in place, having strong systems in place, though it's desirable, is not necessarily a requirement for introducing PCVs. So we would encourage countries to consider global data, but also regional data and neighboring country data when they're considering the burden that would support their applications for PCV introduction. So that's one area. I know that all of these countries are in different stages of their planning for PCV introduction. South Sudan had already begun planning for PCV introduction, but has encountered challenges. At WHO, we were able to offer support at the regional level, especially regarding planning for the national introduction strategies, or if countries are still within their CMYP, we can offer support for those who are planning their NIS, national introduction strategies going forward. And so as part of the discussions around the NIS and where PCV fits into the overall prioritization of new vaccines, we would encourage discussions on the best ways to support financing of each of the individual vaccines, and of course the co-financing issue that has been brought up several times. I was also just going to mention the fact that in terms of the decision-making process, where countries are considering PCV introduction in relation to other new vaccines and the prioritization of new vaccines, we're able to offer support. WHO has developed a framework called Capacity that structures and is able to assist countries to kind of think through the different vaccines that are on the menu and that are necessary for prevention of vaccine preventable disease in their countries. And so we're able to work through those decision-making processes with countries using the Capacity tool. And of course, there are other resources out there that will potentially be mentioned by others on this panel. And then lastly, in terms of considering the products that are available, the PCV products that are available, we've tried to provide some resources for countries as they get into their PCV introduction planning process. There's a PCV Product Considerations document available, a WHO document on the WHO website, and it was included in the pre-reads for this session, that really goes through and tries to give you the breakdown of characteristics of the different products that are pre-qualified and available, and any epidemiologic considerations that each country would want to take in terms of which serotypes are covered, and considerations that could be made given the epidemiology of pneumococcal disease in the country or in the region if the country doesn't have specific data. So I will wrap up there and sign off for the next panelist. Thank you.
Great, that's great. Thank you. That's Dr. Jenny Waldorf from the World Health Organization. Now we're going to call on Dr. Oya Zeren Afsar with UNICEF, and she has an amazing title, New Vaccines and Platforms. So Dr. Oya, over to you.
Thank you very much, Lead. Thanks to the country representatives, first of all, who provided, I think, a very insightful picture of the situation and their thinking about how to go ahead. I would like to also thank to the Every Breath Counts initiative for organizing this webinar and inviting UNICEF. As we heard from country colleagues, there are various barriers preventing countries to prioritize PCV introduction. Programmatically, sometimes there are more important priorities to sort out, such as disease outbreaks, Ebola, as Dr. Dabo from Guinea mentioned, humanitarian situations, with the other colleagues mentioned. And we all know that in the past 2 years, COVID pandemic response and vaccine rollout nowadays, we know very well are placing a big burden on many countries. Then, of course, we heard concerns from some countries. We heard from Dr. Shube from Somalia and Dr. Lege from South Sudan about the affordability of the vaccine. And that, of course, brings the sustainability issue of the PCV after Gavi support ends. As for the affordability, as mentioned before, PCV has been one of the most expensive vaccines in the immunization schedule up until last year. That was when the new 10-valent PCV by the Serum Institute of India became available at $2 per dose, with, of course, co-financing. That should help with that barrier, although we heard that it can still be a concern considering the other co-financing shares that the countries need to pay to Gavi and so on. UNICEF works in a number of areas to support countries to introduce PCV. I will focus on 2 of those in this webinar: vaccine supply and vaccine demand and uptake. But first of all, maybe it's worth reminding that the inequity issue is not only limited with the vaccine introduction, but with the disease burden as well. PCV started to be introduced by low and middle income countries in 2009 with Gavi support, as far as I can recall. And it's been more than 10 years since then. And as time passes, the inequity regarding pneumonia disease burden between the countries which implement the vaccine and which do not grows even bigger. Pneumonia is already one of the biggest childhood killers, and this inequity will only grow once countries will choose to wait even longer. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the importance of prevention and how the availability of an effective vaccine makes a difference, reducing unnecessary disease and death. And I'm sure there is demand and support from the communities, from the caregivers of children in those countries to have a vaccine which should prevent pneumonia, first of all, a disease which they know very well. So from the UNICEF side, we would like to advise countries to think about it and to facilitate the decision to introduce these vaccines in their national immunization programs, start planning and developing the applications to Gavi, and we heard that some of them already started doing so. In terms of supply and demand, I will be quickly mentioning a number of outlines. If we have time later, maybe we can go in detail in each of those. UNICEF is the supplier of the PCV vaccine on the behalf of Gavi. for all the Gavi eligible countries approved for support. At the moment, I would like to say that the global PCV vaccine supply meets demand. There is no shortage of vaccine, and no shortage of PCV vaccine is also expected in the near future, in the coming years. We recently issued a new tender to secure additional doses for the countries which may be willing to introduce PCV in the future. So any country who will introduce will not face with a vaccine supply shortage, like it happens sometimes in a number of other vaccines. But for that, of course, advanced planning is critical. As you know, vaccines are products with limited shelf lives. Current doses are always allocated to somewhere else, to another country, not to allow any production to go to waste. So UNICEF needs to know your intention to introduce PCV, preferably a year in advance, even before applying to Gavi. That's when, in coordination with the Gavi colleagues, we inform the manufacturers about the future demand, so they increase their production accordingly. I think we shared the vaccine price data as a pre-read, so you can also have a look. As for the demand and update, we know that vaccine hesitancy is on the rise worldwide, so adequate communication and engagement with communities are usually crucial when introducing a new vaccine. As I said, pneumonia is a disease well known by the caregivers, but of course communities need to access adequate information and in advance of the introduction. Usually what we see at the country level as a challenge is that communication and social mobilization is usually the first area to be sacrificed when there's a lack of funding. Also, the existing funds for new vaccine introduction are mostly spent to, even if they are allocated for communication, they are mostly spent to produce printed material like posters and flyers, which are not that effective and which do not usually reach the intended recipients. What is needed instead is to reach community leaders and caregivers. Also, the frontline health workers are the most trusted sources of information, so they need to be well informed and also trained to improve their skills on interpersonal communication. And that includes the community health workers. UNICEF has a number of resources, and we are able to support the countries, provide technical assistance on both the supply streamlining and demand and uptake of the vaccine. We have a number of guides, vaccine messaging guide, vaccine misinformation management guide, also training packages on interpersonal communication. So country colleagues and the EPI managers are always welcome to the request support from our country offices, and we would be very happy to support this process, also including the developing the Gavi application at the country level. I would like to thank for this opportunity, and if any other questions or issues, I'll be happy to chip in later. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much. That was Dr. Oya Zeranafsar from UNICEF. Please do keep putting your questions into the chat. We have some excellent questions we're going to be picking up shortly, but we want to first of all hear from two more of our global health leaders Veronica Denti from Gavi. Many of you know Veronica. She's a passionate advocate for vaccines, and this one particularly, we're delighted to have her with us. Veronica.
Thank you very much, Lise. I will start by thanking Lise as well, all of you, because creating a forum that is so direct in engagement and a little simple in this forum made it very effective. In the sense that Lise, it was not easy, Dr. Legge and Dr. Shuba, and I'm sorry if I omit some of your names, to listen to your reasons for the challenges to introduce pneumococcal. It was not easy for me because I'm the person at Gavi that looks after the pneumococcal program and I look after the rotavirus program. So it is my job to try and be a bridge and support you in your application and bring you all the tools that we try to create. I know many of the partners that work together with the Alliance are listening to us today. So it is really my role to try and make these available to you and to find ways to strike a sustainable balance between the needs of Gavi's donors and the needs of Gavi as an alliance and the challenges in countries. So there were a few aspects that I heard that made my heart sing, hearing that Somalia and Guinea and South Sudan, that all of you have, at least in writing, in your plans, the intention to introduce, probably to apply now in 2022, is very heartening. It shows that the awareness of the pain that pneumonia causes is very clear. It's very clear. There's no doubt about the pain that pneumonia causes. What I also hear, though, is that some of the challenges could partially be resolved, the data challenges could partially be resolved by additional support from our partners, like Jenny mentioned, looking at data in neighboring countries, looking at data globally. But what I also hear is that the need for making the case in your own country about the value of this investment, because it is for Gavi a core principle of Gavi policy that the country co-invests. And that is not a principle that we can change. Our policies are dictated by our donors' views, and it is a principle that we have to support. As far as I hear and feel that co-financing is tough, and particularly for South Sudan, this 3 years in a row creates a specific situation. What are some of the quick fixes and some maybe of the longer term aspects that we can discuss? Number one, we need to communicate better to you, because that limit of 70% of DTP3 coverage that was mentioned from Guinea is no longer a limit. Very recently, about a year ago, the board agreed that that limit should be removed to allow so many remaining countries that could not introduce pneumococcal, rotavirus, and other new vaccines to please be welcome and introduce. So that limit for Guinea is no longer a limit, a little barrier less. And it shows how important it is that we have a dialogue that is clear, that is simple, and that is direct. Because the way that we communicate, it should have reached you. It probably should have reached you sooner. But I'm happy that these forums enables us to clear it today. The second aspect that I hear is the need for technical assistance. And hopefully I can look offline and see how much we can mobilize, particularly for Guinea, to try and bring support from an editorial, from a data gathering perspective, to enable a lift to at least bring the application to Gavi. A key limit that I hear across all three countries is on the financing aspect and the sustainability aspect. One of the ways that we like to support is to help make the case to the Ministry of Finance, help show the cost of pneumonia today in the previous years to countries, and help show what I've also heard, that your cold chain infrastructure is being expanded. One of the silver linings of the terrible pandemic that we're experiencing, at least these resources are made available. And maybe by showing this integrated view of cold chain being expanded and showing the case for the investment in pneumonia, and finding and supporting you in finding additional advocacy, hopefully we can help you make a stronger case with your Ministry of Finance to enable an application to come to us. These are not necessarily short journeys, but if we can find a good start on these specific issues in 2022, maybe we can achieve an application in 2022, because a lot of these limits can be also workforce in nature. I've heard the establishment of a task force is available in Somalia. I haven't heard that it is yet available in Guinea or in South Sudan, despite the intention to introduce. So that's another aspect. Personally, what I'm thinking about is also to bring a question back to my colleagues at Gavi. We have restructured recently, as you might know, for Somalia and South Sudan and Chad. They now belong to a group with a new director that looks at the so-called countries in a fragile or conflict situation, where we try to tailor support even more. I would like to bring awareness that these three countries have an intention and feel the need to introduce pneumococcal, and see whether we can differentiate further with some more targeted support for this specific subgroup. One other aspect to please take into account, which I hope will be an opportunity more than a challenge. So with the view to support applications being a little simpler and more cohesive, because we come from a past where separate vaccines were applied with independently from each other. With the CMYP, the national plan to bring them together, but also updating that was a challenge. So we have a new format starting January for any new application in January that will be valid. I would like that format to be a good prompt for new technical assistance to be given, so that this format can be tested and proven to be simpler and to be a little lighter in its approach. And hopefully that can become less of an editorial and data gathering burden for you. But again, it will require us to work even closer together with the Gavi country managers, but also call me in. The fact that you're among the last countries, since 61 countries supported by Gavi already introduced, means that I can focus more moving forward on making sure that we can cross this barrier together. Lise, I will pause here to make room for additional comments and additional questions to come. Thank you very much for being so open, so clear. We're here to support you.
Thank you so much, Veronica Denti, for those outstanding and very helpful and constructive suggestions. We're going to bring you back later when we get into some of these questions. And thank you, audience, for these excellent questions and comments. We're almost to the point of addressing them, but we have our last global health panel speaker, Farzana Muhib from PATH. PATH have been doing extraordinary work for many years, supporting countries to introduce many new vaccines, including PCV. So we're delighted to have Farzana with us. Over to you.
Thanks so much. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you to all of the presenters, as well as to Every Breath Counts for allowing me to actually be a part of this panel. I started actually working in pneumococcal vaccine introduction in 2003. So for this is like coming home for me. So I'm going to try and actually just address some of the questions and challenges that we heard, and what PATH has done already, or tools that are available at PATH. As Jenny Waldorf had mentioned, there is, of course, the capacity tool that allows you to understand the trade-offs, shall we say, between vaccines. But PATH, and in complement to the capacity tool, PATH has actually developed a PCV cost calculator. That PCV cost calculator could hopefully help to remove some of those barriers in regards to understanding what the cost of introducing the different PCV vaccines could be. So, and we'll go ahead and put that into the chat. But I did hear from all of the countries that, of course, co-financing is going to continue to be a challenge. And I was very pleased to hear, of course, that Veronica is completely aware of this and is going to be working with you all on this. And I think one of the big questions, and thank you, Fred, for putting the PCV cost calculator link into the chat, is what are those co-financing costs? And so the PCV cost calculator will not only give you the amount of money that would be required for co-financing, but it also, I think, it can be used as an advocacy tool to governments because it can show you how much money Gavi is actually also putting towards the vaccine itself, as well as allow you to understand what the costs of delivery and implementation are. One of the critical pieces here is that it also allows you to see what the different presentations or what the different vaccines for all of the WHO pre-qualified vaccines may cost you, and do that over a 10-year period. So it's one tool that, of course, can complement all of the others. In terms of some of the other challenges and opportunities, I too was also very pleased to hear that and heartened to hear that all of the countries have actually already included the vaccine into their planning for introduction, that the burden of pneumonia disease is understood. And perhaps, again, as perhaps an advocacy tool, things to think about and add to the arguments, shall we say, for introduction. In addition to, of course, mortality reduction, the other, shall we say, advantages of PCV introduction would be overall treatment cost savings, of course, the availability of beds to treat other diseases, so that children with pneumonia are not actually taking up beds anymore. And of course, in this age of COVID, given the oxygen shortages in particular, hopefully also bring up oxygen for other diseases. I think, moving forward, of course, PATH is more than willing to help in terms of trying to understand, or we would be able to help, I think, with the calculator itself, of course, as well as we would be happy to assist in Gavi applications, of course, if it's needed, or help other organizations who are currently assisting countries with those Gavi applications, as there are task forces already developed and established. So I'll stop there. I know that we want to get to the country questions. But again, thank you to all of the presenters and to Every Breath Counts. And while we can, and we're also, happy to answer any questions in regards to some of the other work that has been done to support country decision making, if and as needed. Thanks.
Terrific. Thank you. That was Farzana Mohib from PATH. Now we have been trying unsuccessfully to get Chad, and we apologize, the connection is not strong enough, but we must not forget Chad in this group of 4 countries that are yet to introduce PCV on the African continent. So we can assure you in the report after this webinar, we will make sure to include the material from Chad. So you get to see the way the ministry is thinking about introducing the PCV. We must not forget Chad. But what I'm going to ask now is for all of our speakers, including our health ministry speakers, if their connectivity allows, and our global health speakers to put their videos on. And we're going to pick up some of these excellent audience questions. I'm going to turn my video back on as well. Okay, terrific. So we've had a couple of questions on vaccine equity and financing, and it was a common theme I noticed in all 3 speakers that the co-financing requirement is very challenging and a major barrier. Veronica was very clear that this is a hard and fast rule for Gavi. So our question now is, how can countries be supported to source their co-financing from other sources like the development banks? I think there's some history with the Asian Development Bank helping in this respect some Asian countries. What do we need to do to help ministries source their co-financing requirement to meet the Gavi objective? If we could start with that, anybody can take that issue, and maybe our health ministry speakers, if you want to talk a little bit about whether your finance ministries are able to source the Gavi co-financing from development banks or potentially other donors. Is there precedent for that? Dr. Lege, Dr. Dabo, Dr. Shube, we welcome your comment there if you have any.
Oui, Dr. Dabo de la Guinée. Dr. Dabo, merci beaucoup. Comme vous le savez, le cofinancement est un réel souci pour les différents pays qui se trouvent dans des contextes différents. Et la Guinée se trouve dans ce contexte-là aujourd'hui. Nous avons l'habitude d'honorer nos engagements pour l'achat des vaccins traditionnels, mais aussi pour le cofinancement. Je pense qu'on est habitué à le faire. Et c'est possible, oui, nous allons porter le message au niveau des autorités du ministère de la Santé, avec les nouvelles autorités du pays, voir dans quelle mesure le ministère de l'Économie et des Finances, qui a l'habitude d'assurer le cofinancement, peuvent discuter avec la Banque mondiale, les autres partenaires financiers pour voir dans quelle mesure on peut accompagner la Guinée. Oui, la discussion peut se faire et nous allons faire le plaidoyer et nous sommes convaincus qu'on peut avoir des avancées dans ce cadre-là. Voilà, merci.
Merci, Dr. Dabo. Dr. Shube, Dr. Lege, would you like to add to that? Or we'll get some comments from our global health panel.
Well, thank you very much. I welcome all the speakers. And also, I think it is maybe a great opportunity this afternoon or this evening to maybe get more information. I thank Oya, I thank Veronica and also Jenny, Farzana for their compliment in this regard. I believe that the challenge we were having and still having is the co-finance issue, because we are experiencing maybe difficulties to maybe meet this obligation. And I hope that we will maybe get maybe more support in that regard. And I hope maybe with the support of Veronica to get maybe way forward about this issue. The other perspective is that also, the other point is that also we were maybe having difficulties maybe of the COVID-19, but I think now we are concentrating this year to at least move ahead, push the PCV introduction agenda on the table, and also maybe advocate more. So I think this is maybe what we are aiming to do, and we are willing to do with the support of the different partners in country and also our financiers, mainly Gavi, in this regard. Thank you, over.
Thank you, Dr. Shuba. And we do hope that all of the ministries are aware of the new, cheaper Serum Institute of India vaccine. I think Lauren Newhouse has just popped some notes from PATH into the chat. It is 30% cheaper, which is which is very important for countries that are struggling to finance the vaccine. Yes, Veronica.
So a thought comes to mind, having studied economics and business. I do believe sometimes numbers can speak a stronger story, not only on the side of death aversion, but also on the side of return on investment. And here are a couple of considerations that are new since 2 years and that were not there earlier. One certainly is the cheaper vaccine. The other one is Gavi supports now a catch-up introduction where the vaccine comes at no cost and protects 5 cohorts of children. And that has to have a value that we can try and measure and bring into a case to support an investment and see where can we play to really bring a case in front of the Ministry of Finance or in front of the development banks to make it easier to access support, because it's always easier to access support if you have a strong case. And I believe this variable that was not there earlier might make the case even stronger. So a question to the our representatives in the countries, as well as to the partners, to the countries is, how much of a difference do you think it could make? And to the partners is, should we try and develop a calculator for that as well? Because I know we have a calculator that runs a number for deaths averted in case of introduction. We have a calculator that runs a number for cold chain and cost, but I don't think we have a calculator that can bring all of these together, including sort of the return on investment at a country level. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've seen it as a simple one. Over.
Thanks, Veronica. Yes, there's no lack of tools. In fact, our colleagues have been putting tools into the chat. There's a lot of different tools that have been developed, but maybe not, there's not some big missing piece. Before we move into address some of the issues Veronica raised, there's some questions in the chat about PCV coverage in Ethiopia and Mozambique. And I wondered, there's a really wonderful website that the WHO and UNICEF have. You can just click and get all the latest PCV and all the other vaccine coverage rates by country. I wondered if anyone can drop that link into the chat. If not, I'll do it shortly. They're called the WUENIC, WUENIC. It's online and you can just click and get the latest. And we need everyone to know that's where they need to go to get the latest coverage. And they're wonderful. Veronica's done it. So please, our colleague asking about Carlotta Moya, please click on that link and you will be able to see every country's latest PCV rate. Okay. I want to, we have got to pick up a number of these other issues. So I want to keep moving. But this issue of co-financing goes to comments from Myro Yakuba Musa and Obina Ebarim about vaccine equity, really calling on the high-income countries to support the financing of vaccines for low-income countries. This is a major issue with COVID at the moment, COVID vaccines, where vaccine inequity is a disaster, but it's been a long-running issue in sort of in many other areas as well. And I think if I can make an appeal to the international partners, for countries that can't finance, like the 4 countries that we're talking about today that are struggling to finance, we need to provide more support to them to source that financing from other sources of international finance. So if we need to bring the World Bank in, like Dr. Dabo said, or the African Development Bank, the Asian Development Bank, other donors, we should be doing that now to help them introduce this vaccine. Sama Yumbuna mentioned the coverage, the 70% coverage threshold. I think, Veronica, you addressed that because to make it very clear, there is no longer a Gavi requirement that a country has to have at least 70% DTP coverage to introduce a new vaccine like PCV or rotavirus. That is no longer the case. We also have a question from Jody Zhu about India and the wonderful milestone that India passed with PCV introduction with the Serum Institute vaccine. I wondered who'd like to give a little bit of a voiceover on the India story to answer Jody's question. Yes, Veronica, go ahead.
Or Jenny. I don't see the video of Jenny anymore, but I'm sure she's in an even better position. Perhaps what is special about the India story is that the investment from India started before a local indigenous vaccine was available, but it was limited in geographic scope to a set of 5 states. But it was done through Gavi support with one of the vaccines, in this case, the Pfizer vaccine, that was used as a pilot to see the impact and the value of this investment for a national scale in India. So it started off with a pilot phase that lasted quite some time, supported by Gavi, and then it scaled up at lightning speed during the pandemic, when the Serum Institute of India vaccine, the indigenous one, became available. Of note, it became available to India even later than to Gavi countries because there was a local regulatory step also to complete and a local tender. But we now see that they've reached all the states, and more, I believe, than 97% of the birth cohort has access to the vaccine. We'll see how this will translate into actual coverage rates next year. There's been a huge political momentum and support behind it. And perhaps, again, the silver lining of a pandemic that affects the respiratory tract is that the focus on the diseases like pneumonia has increased also in its political engagement value. I hope, Judy, that this might answer some of your questions. I would say, though, that a critical success factor in this case was the focus from international partners to invest in an indigenous vaccine that made it even easier for the country to invest in it. Back to you.
Thank you, Veronica. So it wasn't just India that has made progress during the pandemic. I think there were 4 other countries: Tajikistan, Ukraine. There are a couple of others, Indonesia, Timor-Leste. So countries are making progress during very challenging times. If anybody wants to respond to any of those other countries, as well as India, I think to inspire some of our colleagues in Africa that this is possible, please go ahead.
So I would actually just like to add to the India story and the Serum Institute story in terms of the advanced market commitment, because I think that was a critical pull measure, and that's part of the reason why we have a vaccine from an Indian vaccine manufacturer. The AMC has been instrumental in not only lowering the price for Gavi and that price for Gavi, but also as a pull mechanism, because it guaranteed a market for new developing country vaccine manufacturers. And because of that, hopefully soon, I hope, there'll be additional vaccines as well. But the Serum Institute vaccine partially is also, I think, part of the reason why the government and India made this investment so early was because of that guaranteed market and as some sort of a guaranteed, shall we say, price. So I'd just like to acknowledge that AMC and actually the terrific work that Johns Hopkins and IVAC and the pneumococcal ADIP did in establishing and BTEC in establishing that AMC. So it's absolutely the international partners, but that advanced market commitment was critical as well. So just to say that too.
That's excellent. Thank you for adding to that. Anyone else want to add to the India story, or any of the other countries that are managing to make progress during a very difficult period? I can see Veronica has put into the chat recognition of the work of JSI. It takes many partners, I think, working together to make this work. Thank you for all of those links. Jenny, if you're still with us, you've been dropping quite a few resources into the chat. I wonder if you'd come on quickly and just explain a little bit more about some of the resources you're dropping in so people understand exactly what they are.
Sure. Let's see. I included a couple of WHO resources, the ones that I mentioned earlier. So the Pcv Product Considerations document, which outlines different considerations that apply to the different products. And we developed this document in part because of the new pre-qualification of Pneumococcal. And we wanted to sort of, Pneumococcal is not addressed in the most recent position paper from 2019. And although we have not yet issued a new position paper, that document addresses the data that are available for Pneumococcal or that were available about a year ago. Of course, new data are accruing, but I think it's helpful for kind of mapping out information, and it includes Pneumococcal on there in terms of the biological characteristics, but also programmatic considerations and cost effectiveness, and the resources are listed there as well. And then I listed a link to the capacity tool. That was the decision-making framework that WHO has that can assist countries in the process for prioritization and decision-making of different prevention methods. And that can be used actually to compare multiple vaccines, multiple non-vaccine public health measures that a country might be considering in addition to PCV or other vaccines. And the last one I put in there was the IVAC View Hub, which includes the WUNIC data, but it's nicely visualized on a map and it's easy to navigate. And I like that one. It includes a bit more than just coverage. Probably have some more resources.
View Hub is a wonderful website. We're going to make sure in the report we provide all of these resources will appear in it, so you'll understand exactly what they are and what their purpose is. I can see plenty of comments from Enrique Paz, thank you, and Srihari Datta, thank you, just explaining a little more about the issues we're speaking about. I want to now hand back for final comments, and I want to give the final word to each of our health ministry leaders. And they can see the amount of support that's available to introduce this vaccine, and they're making plans to do so. We've heard that on this call. Guinea is quite well advanced in their preparations. And the purpose of this call is to offer really more support or to troubleshoot better ways of overcoming some of the barriers you've highlighted. So if you could very briefly leave, you've got a very large audience here, Dr. Dabo, Dr. Lege, and Dr. Shube listening to you. If you could leave them with one message for what your health ministry needs to introduce PCV before 2025, what message would you leave this audience with? And I'll start with Dr. Shube.
Well, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity and raise my voice in this regard. On behalf of Somalia, the government and the Minister of Health, we are committed and we are also willing and looking forward to the introduction of this new vaccine and adding to the routine ABI. So, but we ask from the partners, we ask this forum to provide the necessary support that will make us possible to do this introduction, mainly the co-finance and also supporting the coding system. And I think maybe I have shared maybe all the points that we are having, mainly the challenges that we are facing. So we ask maybe to provide the necessary support that will enable, that will facilitate us making possible to do this introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mukhtar Shube from Somalia. Dr. Mustafa Dabo, Guinea.
Merci beaucoup. Et je voudrais, au nom du ministère de la Santé, vous dire que nous sommes engagés à introduire ce vaccin le plus tôt que possible, autour de 2023, et avec d'autres vaccins, bien sûr. Et pour ce faire, nous avons besoin de l'appui des partenaires ici présents. Et en termes de documentation des évidences au niveau du pays, nous savons qu'il y a des évidences au niveau régional et mondial, mais les évidences, on a besoin de soutien des partenaires, mais aussi de soutien pour le plaidoyer au haut niveau auprès du ministère de l'économie et des finances, auprès des autorités pour assurer le cofinancement de ce vaccin-là. Et voilà, nous réaffirmons une fois encore notre engagement et notre volonté à faire avancer ce dossier-là. Nous avons appris beaucoup de bonnes informations, notamment l'obstacle qui était sur les 70% de couverture en DTC3. Je pense que ça, c'est une excellente information pour nous que nous avons appris aujourd'hui parce que c'était un facteur de blocage pour nous, même pour l'élaboration de la soumission. Donc, on vous remercie très, très, très bien. Et nous suggérons aussi qu'il y ait des rencontres de ce genre périodiques pour qu'on puisse mieux communiquer entre nous. Merci. Thank you very much.
Excellent, Dr. Dabo. Thank you so much for your comments. Excellent. Dr. Lege, South Sudan.
Okay, thank you, Liti. I think I don't have much. First, I want to thank from WHO, UNICEF, and Gavi for their comments. I think for us in South Sudan, yeah, we have an interest, and we need to, as I mentioned from beginning, we want to introduce that vaccine so that the children of South Sudan will benefit from that vaccines like other countries. But due to our economic situations, we are not able to fulfill the co-financing. So it's now like an obstacle to us. I just want to ask our donors, especially Gavi, to look on these things. Otherwise, the children of South Sudan will not benefit from these vaccines. As you know that the disease burden in the country is serious, but because of co-financing now, our children is missing these vaccines. We are losing the children. So we hope the donors to come and bear with us so that we can able to introduce. We as a country, we are ready to do it as we put in CMYP. We're ready to do it, but because of these barriers, we are not able to move ahead. Yes, we are not yet started the planning, but like what been mentioned, especially from side of UNICEF, the OIE, they say they are ready, and even the technical assistant. So this like I don't know, I will say is a yellow light or the green light for us to start preparations on this matter. I don't have much to say, just I hope the donors will be with us, supporting us. As you know, like somebody mentions here, that South Sudan, Chad, and Somalia is a fragile countries. As you know, it's fragile. Please don't leave us alone. Be with us. Thank you.
Thank you for those truly inspiring comments. What a perfect way to end that session, Dr. Lege. Okay, so let me provide some final remarks and next steps so everybody is clear on what's going to happen now. I want to give a huge thank you to our Health Ministry officials and our Global Health Panel, and to you, our audience, for sharing such important questions and making such helpful comments during the chat. We will collect all of the information that was shared today and produce a report, but it won't be the kind of report that's difficult to read. It will be very short and sharp and action oriented. We're going to take what we discussed today and turn it into action statements to address some of the barriers that our colleagues raised. We will not forget Chad. It was a shame we couldn't have them here, but we will circle back with Dr. Mahamat Hamid. He's the Director General of the Health Ministry in Chad. He spoke at the Global Pneumonia Forum, and his colleagues, to make sure we pick up all of their issues and that they're reflected in the report. There will be a recording of this session, and we encourage you to share it. When you look at a map of Africa, Gavi produces such a map, and they highlight the countries in green that have introduced PCV, and the countries that have not are left blank. And at the moment, what stands out are the 4 countries we discussed today. Somalia, South Sudan, Guinea, and Chad are not green. And our purpose with webinars like this and what comes after them is, in a few years, when we look at that map, it's all green, and every child, no matter where they're born in an African country, is protected with the pneumococcal conjugate vaccine. So while we can all agree on the goal, which is 90% PCV coverage by 2025, 80% in every district, that's what the Global Action Plan for Pneumonia says. That's what Gavi 5.0 and Immunisation Agenda 2030 want to see. So we all agree on that. Why is that the goal? There's a much bigger goal we're all driving towards, and that's the Sustainable Development Goal for Child Survival, SDG 3.2. To achieve that goal, every country has to drive child deaths down to 25 per 1,000 by 2030. So all this talk about vaccines is in the service of a much, much bigger goal, and that's making sure children reach their 5th birthdays. While we may all have the will to achieve this historic goal in the 9 years left to 2030, there are multiple obstacles in our way. And our colleagues today have shared some of those obstacles. They range from lack of local data, understanding the burden of pneumococcal, lack of information on the cost effectiveness of introducing PCV. Remember, there are many, many, many challenges in these countries, health challenges. We're in the middle of a pandemic. There's numerous pressures on the public purse. Finance ministries have to make tough decisions. So how does a ministry understand the life-saving potential of PCV relative to other investments that they might make? So more data is needed. But the overwhelming need is for co-financing this vaccine. Yes, it's now cheaper, 30% cheaper with the Serum Institute of India Pneumococcal vaccine, but some countries will still require co-financing support, and the international health community should help them source that from outside of Gavi, whether it's an international development bank or other donors. I think we have a responsibility to come up with some solutions, and that was a clear call to action from this webinar. We need better solutions to help countries meet their co-financing. So we're going to summarize some of those solutions in the report, and there may well be further meetings after this one. Dr. Dabo was very clear, saying meetings like this are helpful and we need more of them, more direct communication. This issue is not going away. The need to protect children, indeed all populations, from respiratory infections with vaccines, existing and new, is only going to become more important, especially if we have entered an era of respiratory infection pandemics, where COVID-19 is the first, but not the last, and not even the worst. COVID-19 has so far largely spared children. It may not be the case for future respiratory pandemics. Children may in fact be targeted by future pathogens. Climate change is increasing the major risks for pneumonia, air pollution and poor diet. And urbanization everywhere is increasing crowding, which only increases transmissions from respiratory infections. So the environment we're now all in means we need to fully activate every tool we have to protect children from pneumonia and develop new ones. By 2030, 1 in 3 children in the world will be an African child. They will largely determine as they grow up what kind of planet we all live on. We all share a stake in a healthy future for these children. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
so
Dabo.
much. Thank you, Dr. Lake. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Dabo. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.